Yay, we are live.
Lovely.
How exciting. Hang on 2 seconds. Let's just get this up.
It's always fun to be with my friend Angie.
Oh, I know. This is going to... Hang on, I've got to get it so I can see it. There we go. Yay! We are live. Woo!
We get two geek gals together and we just start geeking out and having fun.
Exactly. So welcome, Staci. Woo!
Thank you so much.
This is so much fun. So yes, I'm looking forward to this because this is a topic that, like you know, is dear to my heart. Something that I have loved like forever. All about security and all of that privacy data. You know, all of that. Maybe it's from reading so many spy novels as a child, but I just love it. Like, yeah, the whole thing. So welcome.
Thank you so much. You know, the thing is, guys, hang in there because this may sound like scary stuff. It really isn't. We lock our doors, right? That's privacy. We send mail. Well, when people use the post, they used an envelope, which they closed, right? That was privacy. So we know how to make privacy and security fun.
Absolutely. So yeah, so I've known you now for what, 5 years?
Oh, it feels like a good period of time, and I'm so delighted for our long association.
Yes, me too. Awesome. So I should share a little bit about you, actually. So you've consulted in marketing, technology, you've been in compliance, you've done business reengineering, you've done business strategies, you've worked with Fortune 500 companies, you've worked with startups, you've been leading massive projects like 9 figures, which is huge, right? And led teams of hundreds. And you've worked in the crypto area and the security and the privacy, getting lots of the compliance and the processes in place for companies, like big companies. We're talking like Nike and Xerox. We're not talking little company. We're talking doing stuff for big companies to get them compliant with all the security and privacy laws that are all coming out. So yeah, so you are a person to talk to, like, really seriously about this topic that, like I told you, that I love. And for me, like my background in DFAT, when I worked there, you know, I was teaching IT security. So this is something that I'm really passionate about, because I know what can happen if you don't do it, if you're not secure. So yeah, so welcome, Staci.
Thank you, Angie. And you know, it's my passion that the learnings that we have from bigger companies can be applied to smaller companies, can be applied to startups, can be applied to coaches and solopreneurs, because if you aren't exposed to that information, you don't know, right? And it can really threaten your business.
Oh, absolutely. Just a little things like, for example, the statistics on companies who have not backed up their data. So you're in a company, you haven't backed up, and something happens. Okay, so we have a flood, we have a fire, whatever. Something just happens.
Your computer dies, right?
Exactly.
How many people have had computers just not work? You know, it happened to me this morning. I went to log in, all of a sudden, nothing. I had a meeting coming. It was dead. But before I panicked, number one, I have 3 different backups to the cloud, right? Different clouds, different times. And so I know I can always get to my data. But then I, had to figure out, okay, well, what do you do? And then I did those things, and then boom, it was back. But that can happen to anybody.
Oh, absolutely. And the statistics are that if these things happen, the number of businesses that don't recover when they have these sort of incidents, because everything's on the computer. We don't have filing cabinets anymore with things, and to even go back and try to do that, you could imagine that would be just a nightmare to try to recreate.
Oh, sure. Let alone, what about the times if someone, God forbid, your computer is stolen, or you leave it behind in a taxi back when people were out in the world, right? Then you not only have the issue of, oh my gosh, I can't get to my data, but then you have the concern about who else can get to my data. And what people don't always know, at least here in the States, if you have, that would be considered it could be a security breach. Well, then you have financial reporting obligations, and you have to pay for credit checks for all of your customers for an entire year. That adds up very quickly.
Wow. That's huge, isn't it?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
And there's some basic things that you can do. I think that it starts with the belief that smaller companies have, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm small, nothing's going to happen to me, and I think of that as one of the biggest hidden threats that really is lurking and can stop you.
Yes. And I think too that because like when you're a startup, you're a small business, there is so many things to do. It's possibly one of those things, and I could be guilty of it too, like one of those things like, oh, I'll get around to that. I know it's important, but you know what? I'll get there. It's on my list,
It's understandable, right? And because you want to make money, you need to make money. Revenue is everything. And this can take time. It can be a pain. And if you don't know exactly what to do, like one of the things I know we were chatting about before we started is privacy policies. People think that just because I have a privacy policy, hey, I'm good. Well, no. And you can have a privacy policy that has too much in it. I don't know if there are people who I've seen who've just copied someone else's privacy policy. And I'm talking small businesses, the bigger companies often have people like me to say, no, don't do that. Well, if you do that, one of the things that needs to be in a privacy policy is often a list of the different technologies that you do and the different services that you do. Wow. Now, if you have a soup to nuts description because you borrowed it from someone else, which PS you really shouldn't do. You need to have a lawyer look at these things, at least in the US and Europe and Canada. I can't speak to Australia. But if you have this huge privacy policy that covers 100 different things that you actually don't do, well, guess what? You have now made a commitment, a contract that you are going to be protecting someone's privacy in all those situations. So you could actually get yourself in trouble by having too much in your privacy, just like you could get yourself in trouble by having too little.
Yes, that's true.
Now, I have to do a disclaimer. I am not an attorney, and in the US, you guys know this, I think, there are certain things that you can and cannot say. I'm a privacy expert. I'm a tech geek. Anything that we share, I highly encourage you to check out with an attorney. This is business advice, so this is my disclaimer. I function as a privacy expert, but rules and laws vary. And that's one of the things that makes it complicated. They vary across the world. There are 128 or more different privacy rules in different countries, and they're changing all the time.
Yeah. Yes. It's amazing, isn't it? I can remember, like it's just on a side, which really gobsmacked me, but I remember when we were in a meeting and one of our fellow participants is a lawyer, and he mentioned that with coaching, like in the US, and I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but there are certain things you can say and certain things you can't say, and like it varies from state to state, and it's got to do with the state that the client's in, or has it got to do with the state that you're in, and it can become complicated, and people can get in lots of trouble by what they not knowing that they're saying. That that they can't say it, or they can say certain things. I mean, and that was quite amazing, actually.
It is, but the thing is, guys, while we're talking about things that may be scary, there is good news, right? So that remember that we're not saying this to scare you, just for your awareness that for example, in terms of data privacy, the rules apply to where your visitors are, your web visitors, your Facebook visitors. So if Angie comes to my page, I may be in a state in the US that doesn't have really restrictive privacy laws, but she's in Australia where you guys have very restrictive privacy laws, and a lot of people I know follow those rules. Your rules apply when you come to my page.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Which is actually, just saying that's got to do with the GDPR. Like in Europe, like we have to make sure that we are compliant, and that all those sorts of things, that people actually agree to join our email list, that we don't just add people, for example, like there's all those rules
Absolutely.
to do
Well,
with
Europe and Canada, and even in the US, a lot of people used to think, oh, the US is fair game. Well, guys, California, there are, I think, 20 some odd states that have different flavors of privacy rules. It's a free-for-all. And so the good news is there are ways of handling these things, but you've got to take some ownership. Because a lot of people I know, Angie, they say, oh, my email provider is going to take care of it. MailChimp will take care of it for me. Well, MailChimp takes care of a tiny little piece, right? Like it won't let you sign up someone without permission, but that isn't all of it. And there's more that needs to be done. And if you read the contract with MailChimp, MailChimp protects MailChimp. It doesn't protect you.
That's right. You have to be responsible for your data at the end of the day. Okay.
Right, which makes sense, right? Like if I always like to think back to the days, and for some people maybe you didn't have file cabinets and that kind of thing because you've been more digital, but if you had a file cabinet with people's client files in it, and say you're a medical company here in the States, you have to have that locked. You are responsible to protect your data. So if you think about it, and that goes into some of the security things I know you care about so much, Ange, is if you think about it that way, your VAs, your tech team, anyone who's helping you, you have that same responsibility to be aware of your passwords, the personal information that they have access to. And one of the things that, say, a MailChimp private policy doesn't cover is, have you written down what your procedure is? Do you change your passwords on a periodic basis, right? And do you use something other than password ! as your password, right? One of the
password one, password two.
Oh, gosh, right? So, that's the thing that you were saying earlier. It can feel like a pain and, oh my God, why do I have to do it? Or
I've been to, so I was just going to say, sorry, just about passwords. I've been to some organizations, and or places in the workplace, and people, you could lift up their keyboard and the password was on a post-it note stuck underneath the keyboard.
Oh yes, or written on a piece of paper. Yeah, it's crazy. And those are the things that feel like pains, especially to solopreneurs. Why do I have to change my password? Oh my gosh, there are tools. You can use things like LastPass if you're a solopreneur that will hash your passwords. It'll make it hard for people to see, makes it easier for you to change the password. So there are always solutions. Never shy away from taking that extra step. If there's any message that all of your followers take away with them, Angie, it should be that there are solutions, and they should talk to people who know what those solutions are.
Yeah. But a lot of it's just common sense, really, too, isn't it? It's just making sure that you protect what you have, that you've backed yourself up, that you don't, like we were saying before, you don't click on things that you don't know, because these people, people like I've seen, there's bank things, and people send emails, banks and PayPal, and they're very clever, and they make it look exactly like the real thing. And the thing is, don't click on their links. If you want to check it out, go onto your own browser, bring up the site, and then check it out. But don't click on the link, because that's just
you're right on, right? And the tricky thing is, when we're on our phones, when we're on our cell phones and you're just scrolling, it's so easy. Oh, my bank is telling me something's wrong, and you just click on it. But whereas if you make it a point not to click on anything that you aren't sure of, or anything that's really sensitive, until you're on your computer, because you could just put your cursor over the link before you click on it and check what the link says. And that's like really simple. It can seem like a tiny minutia, but if you do that, you'll see, oh my gosh, it's not bank ABC, it's sending me somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah, and I know of places where they've actually had the whole screen is active, like any link, anything on the screen, and it actually takes you to the place. So yeah,
It
it's
can,
very,
it can have, well, think about what we do on Facebook, right? We use for folks who are doing some stuff on Facebook, and I think you teach about this, right? You have a website and you use the Facebook pixel, or at least you used to before Facebook changed things. And then you have a pixel that's buried on the website, so it tracks everybody who has visited your site from Facebook. Well, that's great marketing information, for example, but the bad guys can do that as well, and they can create things where information gets stolen. So that's why it's such an amazing and interesting field, I think.
oh, I think so too. It's fascinating, you know. And just talking about Facebook, because you just brought that up, you know, there are some etiquette things, there are some things that people should be aware of with Facebook for security reasons. You know, one of them is your date of birth. The number of people I see that it comes up and says the year that they were born is frightening to me. And it's very easy just to, when you've got your personal information, there's a little click there, there's a little field that says show my year or hide my year or something like that.
Right.
It's so simple just to click that and not have the year, because, you know, like we were saying, the identity theft is huge. It is massive. And one of the things is date of birth. And so that's a field. If you never use that, never show it anywhere, then it makes it easier, you know, like, or harder, sorry, for people, to the bad guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, there are two different ways to be thinking about. And yeah, it means taking that trusting heart that a lot of people have and adding the mind to balance the heart. Somebody can learn enough about your date of birth, for example, that they create an email that's about people entering the workforce, or, you know, in the prime of life, or retirees, right? Depending on where you are in life. And it looks like it's geared just toward you, but then in it can have, you know, click here and tell us your bank information, tell us your social security. Again, it's people who pretend to be the bad guys, people who ask questions to get more information so they can steal your identity. And Angie, you and I were talking about that before we went live. There are a number of things to be aware of, I think.
Yeah, there's 5 things, and I've been I used to remember them all. I used to teach it, but I can't remember all of them now. But stealing your identity is massive. Like, I know that it is. It's something that a lot of people do. And one of the things is date of birth. The other is your mother's maiden name. So, you know, using those when they have those questions that, like, you know, those security questions that you have. I mean, lots of people do it to verify you. You know, don't choose your mother's maiden name as one of those questions. Choose anything else, you know. But there are people out there that fish for this information, and they can get enough of the security question answers that can then lead to taking your identity. You know, I think place of birth is another one. I can't remember the rest. I have to try to see if I can remember them. But yeah.
Is one of them something about the street where you grew up or something like that? It maybe, I don't know, but those are also
the security question. Yeah.
Yeah, the defaults that people use in passwords, their security questions. So the easy thing is to think about hobbies that you love, clothing that you like. You know, there's quirky, maybe places that you've visited or that are on your bucket list, you know, things that aren't just the top of the mind first cut security question. So that if someone were trying to steal your identity or crack your code or whatever, they won't get as far.
Absolutely.
You know, the other thing that I think of in terms of security is complex passwords. And I think you like this one as much as I do. Now, what's a complex password? That's where you have capital letters and small letters and numbers and symbols, and you put them all together. And yeah, it can be hard to remember. However, the longer the password and the more complex it is like this, the harder it is to crack. There's a site, and Angie, I'll look for it. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but we can always add it to your Facebook group, that allows you to check the security of a password and show how likely it is to be cracked.
Isn't that
Now,
interesting? Yeah.
what I would recommend is that you don't actually use that password, because I don't know what happens with that information on the other side to that very point, right? But you could test with an example. So let's say somebody, I live in Oregon, and so if I tested Oregon exclamation point, right? Well, that's going to be pretty easy to crack, and it takes it down to like the minutes, whether something is 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I always make sure that mine are, a few hundred years to a few thousand years of difficulty.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things you can do too, like you're talking about the length, and one of the things is that I found really helpful is to have a sentence. You can have the capitals and the little things and all of that, but you can put it into a sentence. So instead of you going A, B, Z, 5, 3, 2, 1, exclamation mark or whatever, you can say, the picture has red. The picture is red, for example, and then you can put, the A's, you can put the ats, and you can put the dollar signs or the exclamation marks or whatever numbers. You can change it, but it still is the sentence.
You could even use some of the aspirational things that you want to do. Like if you want to generate,
I do that.
Over $100,000, right? You can use your affirmations, can become your passwords. And especially if you change them like one should every 60 days or so, think of how cool that would be. Every time you're logging in, you're physicalizing your affirmation. That would be like totally cool.
I do that. I actually do that. That's what my password is. It is actually a sentence, and it is actually a something I'm visualizing, and something. Yeah, it is. It actually is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Totally cool. So we could talk about we could talk about security stuff all day. Did you want to talk a little bit about privacy stuff too, or?
I did want to just say a couple of things maybe about Facebook.
Yes,
just a few things, because it is something that everybody's on, and it is something that people can gather data from. I know, like, for example, if you go for a job, employers will look up your profile on Facebook. They will look up profiles on LinkedIn. They will look up stuff like that. So apart from the fact that one thing is to make sure that if someone does look at it, it's what you want to represent you. But that's the first thing. But there's little things like tagging, like, not to tag other people unless they've given you permission, like to ask first, because you don't know whether that person took a sick day, for example, and shouldn't have been there. But also, I had a case where I was in a group at a course, and they said basically, put the photos up, that's fine, but no tagging, because somebody in this group is being stalked. And so they didn't want the name to be anywhere out there, so you don't know sometimes what people are going through, and the other one I think that's really important is just being aware of photos, and where you're taking photos, what's in your backgrounds.
Yes, we were just talking about that before. That I think that you had a story about somebody where their identity and their location was discovered from the photo. Why don't you tell that story? That was really impressive.
Yeah, so this guy, there was a gentleman, he was actually he was at a park, and he saw a young girl, and he wanted to prove that you could, with photos, you could actually, you could find out information about a person. So he found a young girl. She happened to be in the park where he was. He just took a photo of her, and he found her on Flickr. And he didn't know her from bar soap, and it wasn't to do anything other than just to prove that what could happen. I think he was doing it live, like in a demonstration or whatever. I don't know. No, he wasn't. He wouldn't have been. But anyway, what I ended up doing was, with the photos that the person had, he could actually take and do the whole of the house. He could work out where the doors were, the windows were, what furniture was where it was, and all of that, which is quite interesting, that taking those photos, you don't think like, oh, there's a window here, and then the next time you're over that side, oh, the window's over there, so there's a door there, and you can locate the house. That was quite amazing for me, that
Oh, it is, because
Yeah.
then they could break into the house, or I've also heard of stories where somebody took a selfie in some places and it was used to actually identify where that person lived and where they were because of some of the landmarks that were in the background. So it's something to think about if you're on vacation or you're taking photos near your home. Do you really want that information out there? Another one that's a real hot button for me is when we're in Zoom and we have our names. Now, depending on how that information is used and what is used later, that's considered personal information. Your face, your voice, and your name, and all of that put together is personal information. And it's something to be aware of, because just because somebody has had to sign a disclaimer doesn't mean that you're protected from being able to use their image. One of the rules we were talking about in privacy, right, in Europe and in Canada and in California, and I believe in Australia, just to name a few, is somebody can change their mind and withdraw their consent at any time.
Wow.
So if you've done a Zoom and then you're doing an evergreen or something and you're reselling that Zoom, or that Zoom is on your website, what do you do if someone's face is in the audience and then they write to you and say, take me down? You got to. What do you do? That can affect your business.
Yeah. It's you can't do an evergreen. I mean, in my opinion, that's completely wrong. To actually be to sell a product with other people in it. I mean, like, I've done stuff where I've run a course and thought I'm going to like sell that, like the recording, but I've actually like recorded myself actually afterwards doing it, so that there was nobody else in the photo, or using the things in Zoom, you can actually hide people and all of that, making sure that if that's what you want, to make sure that no one's in it. You can't have other people in it with their names.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's something that I recommend to my clients. And sometimes they follow it and sometimes they don't follow that advice. But it's good to think about when you're doing a webinar, when you're doing a teaching, to remind people that you are recording, and to invite people, if they don't want to be on the recording, to, for example, close their video, to stop their video, and then make sure your settings are set up so that they don't show up. Now, there's a trade-off, as always, right? There's a trade-off between engagement and protection. So I know what a lot of people do, and Angie, I think you do this, is that in the classes, you only disseminate it to the people who are in the classes, and you make sure that it's protected so people can't just download it and do something else with it.
Absolutely. So that's, if you're putting the links, giving people links, then making sure on YouTube, if you're doing it there, that they're unlisted, so that nobody else can actually find the links. It's not open to the public,
Yes.
And so if I do a webinar, for example, I will only send it to the people who have registered for that seminar. I won't like put it out in a public post to my email list. It only goes to the people who are in the, because of the security.
And that's really important. And guys, I think it's a differentiator, because knowing that somebody is going to care about your security that much is really important. It goes back to one of the things that we talked about as threats, which is this belief that, oh, my fill in the blank, they're going to take care of it. So my coach, my VA, my email provider, that I don't have to worry about it. They'll take care of it. And the thing to be conscious of is, at the end of the day, you as the business owner are in charge of your security. You are in charge of your data privacy, and you're the custodian of it for your clients. And so, Angie, you were just modeling in that example how carefully you safeguard that information for your clients.
To me, it's very, very important. I'm very, very, very strong on data security, like on private security, basically privacy. Yeah.
Yep.
Very, very much so. And the other one, I think that people like from small business is it's not going to happen to me. It only happens to other people. It doesn't happen to me.
I've run into that a lot. I put together a PDF about certain privacy pitfalls and what to do about them. And, we run into that with privacy and GDPR. There are people who are, oh, I'm under the radar. No one's gonna find me. And back at the beginning of this year, I saw a record. There are companies being fined, in some cases $14,000, that's US, for an infraction in one of the European countries, $2,000, $4,000. You know, those fines are real. So whether it's privacy or security, it can happen to you. And it's really important to take the ownership, just like you do for your program. You wouldn't be sharing information that you didn't know, vet, believe in, and stand by. You need to put that same care into your web page, your Wi-Fi connection, your password, your privacy.
Absolutely. So thank you, Staci. Thank you for today. I think it's been awesome. There's been a really lot of awesome little gems, I think, in the conversation that if people hear, it'd be great if anyone who's watching the replay, you know, if you get a little gem, pop it down below and say, that was awesome. You know, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure I blah, 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 you know, and I know that you've got a PDF that we can pop in the comments so that people can download the PDF and contact you as well if they want more information about privacy and all of that sort of thing. So we'll grab your details and I'll pop them in the comments after when we finish the recording. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having this conversation. Guys, you can see we could just talk about this, and we do. When we get together, we talk about this stuff all day.
Absolutely.
Because there are simple things that you can do. It's the art and the science of protecting yourself. And at the end of the day, who would you rather go to? Someone who cares so much about your business like it's their own to protect it, or somebody who doesn't?
Absolutely. So thank you, Staci. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Bye.